Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh episode of GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. I just have a programming note. Tonight, usually we have Bare Their Souls with Dan Aguirre and myself. We're pushing it back to Wednesday as my man Dan Aguirre is off somewhere to enjoy a concert on a Tuesday night. So wish him safe travels and a great time at the concert, and we'll be back tomorrow night with plenty of Bears talk and who knows what else Dan will share with us, maybe some sex stories at this concert or something like that. Let's bring in the man of the hour. His name is Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you, my friend?
Sex stories at a concert?
Yeah, you know,
come on.
Dan always has a sex story of some sort, so I don't know what he'll
Now, I got to tell you, I went to, it was at, I don't remember what the name of it was, but actually they had more people than Woodstock. It was a few years later, and that was at Watkins Glen. And the Allman Brothers were there, the band, and a few others. I mean, there's probably 500,000 people there.
Wow.
And some of the shit you saw going on right in the grass, right in front of you the night before, mostly the night before. But then that next day, when people were getting ready to watch the concert, this was the early 70s. It was probably 73, something like that. Mm-hmm. And people hiring a kite and there's like thousands and thousands of people walking around. And I remember this one vividly. So this one person, he's sitting there and obviously high, and he's going, downs, man. And so somebody comes up, well, where can I get some downs? And he goes, well, man, you go down this way and then take a left at the tent and then take a left at another tent and then you'll find it. And the guy says, well, how do I know I'm going to find it? And he says, well, there's a sign. And what's the sign say? Downs, man. And it just made you laugh.
That is great. Downs, man. I don't think I've ever taken downers, but that's for another show. The big story with the Chicago Bears is that a lot of people are down regarding the injury situation for the Chicago Bears, and the number one injury of concern is Tevin Jenkins, who is out for probably the first month of the season, as reported by Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune. This is what head coach Matt Eberflus said about the injury earlier today, about an hour ago at a press conference.
And you guys all saw Jenkins is dealing with an injury, and as we stated before, that we will say that it is a week-to-week issue. It's bigger than a day-to-day. And that's all we're going to disclose at this time.
So, Greg, how concerned are you that for the third season in this young player's career, he is going to miss substantial time with injury issues?
Well, I'm going to just play devil's advocate a little bit here, and we don't know he's going to miss substantial time.
Mm-hmm.
Coach said week to week. The only thing you got is Biggs report, and I'm not trying to contradict Biggsy at all, but if it's a muscle situation, those things can be healed in days, depending on the severity, or it could take some time. And they're not going to say anything. I think they've gotten to a point with this team. They've started to develop some depth. You know, I was answering some questions on Twitter today. Well, you know, White here is not good at left guard. The hell he's not. He's been a starter at left guard for years, and he's a pretty damn good player. And he's also got a little injury with his right hand, so that could affect his snapping. So the logical thing to do is put him at his old position where he's got a lot of experience And then you put Patrick, who was signed a year ago to be the starting center. And I keep repeating this, but you go back to 21 tape when he started at Green Bay at center, he was flawless. I don't care what happened last year, but in the 21 year, he was flawless playing center for a playoff team. So it's, is Cody going to be as dominant a run blocker as Tevin? No. But who knows how long Tevin's going to be out? And here's the key. Next week, if they think he's going to miss a month of regular season, then after the cut down next Tuesday to 53, so on Wednesday you can do this. So next Wednesday, they'll place him on IR, and then he's out 4 games. Right. And until then, we don't have, and they still don't have to say anything unless you place him on IR, and then he's out 4 weeks. So he's going to miss 4 games. Until then, we have no idea, and they're not going to tell you. And as he said, you know what? We don't have to say anything till September 6th, so we're not. And part of that is competitive advantage. You don't want to give Green Bay and the opponent the following week any opportunity to prepare one way or the other. You just leave it go.
It's fair to say that, as you've mentioned today and in other shows, that Lucas Patrick's 2021 tape with the Green Bay Packers was excellent. But is it fair to say that in the playing time he has had here in Chicago, he has never been 100%, and therefore, whether he played at guard or at center in those few snaps that he did play for the Chicago Bears, he was not 100% and therefore did not show what he truly can be as an offensive lineman?
No, I think that's fair to say. And he was signed to be a center. Do you know how much center he played last year in a game?
About
One quarter.
One quarter. I'd say half a dozen snaps or so.
So, he's a vet, and you want to have vets going into the thing. And I think, they're developing pretty good depth with Carter. Leatherwood is actually, I'll tell you what this I didn't know if Leatherwood was going to make this team, but this injury to, depending on the severity, the injury to Tevin, that may give him a spot. In all honesty, I'm more concerned with the tackle depth than I am with the interior offensive line. I think the interior offensive line is fine.
Mm-hmm. And Doug Kramer has been a bit of a revelation. This is what Coach Eberflus said about the backup center.
Doug's done a really good job. Doug is a fierce competitor. He competes. He's got good agility to jump to the second level. He's got good hat speed. He's very intelligent to make all the protection calls and the IDs for who we're spotting to in the run game. So he's done a really good job. He's put a really good foot forward this training camp.
I really like
he had one thing there, Aldo, that I have never heard, and I've been doing this a long time. He's got real good hat speed. What the fuck is hat speed? I know what it is. Your head's on a swivel. Yeah. And you're looking at, and when you're trying to help out, you're calling out, you're calling out the protections at the line of scrimmage. You're keeping everybody alert. I know what he meant, but I just never heard the phrase before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never heard that either. They come up with new terms every season, it seems. A lot of talk in the chat room about number 58, right tackle Darnell Wright, limping off the field. Eberflus had no word on the extent of that injury, not that he would share much to begin with. So we'll have to just keep an eye on.
I don't know during what part of practice he came out, but if it was something they thought it was severe, he would have known about it right away.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, I've been to practice. I know how the doctors are there in the training staff, and the first thing they do after they pull the guy over is let the coach and the GM know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. So the interior of the offensive line, you're feeling good regarding the depth, and I would agree with you there. But it's the offensive tackle position is a bit of a concern. What have you seen out of left tackle Larry Borom? We've all expected him to play better in 2023, and of course, it's still very, very early. But of the snaps he's had in preseason, how are you feeling about his progression?
Well, I tweeted this out there. The game. By the way, I'm getting a little like a repeat of what I'm saying to you.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can fix that right away. I think I should be good now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So far, it's good. Anyway, he started off Saturday night at left tackle, and Collins was at right tackle, and I thought both of them struggled a little bit. Then they flip-flopped them. And after they flip-flopped them, they both played pretty good. So, I don't know if that's why I have concern, because you're not going to keep 4 tackles. At least I don't think so. So you got to have somebody that you can trust on the left and right side. So who's that going to be? Is that going to be Borum, or is that going to be Carter, or is it going to be somebody that's not currently on the Chicago Bears roster? And that's a possibility also. Because what we ought to do is go over what are the procedures for next week, because we're not going to have a show till next Wednesday, right after the cutdown. So by 3:00 Chicago time next Tuesday, they got to be down to 53. Anybody they put on IR before 3:00 is out for the year. They cannot be brought back.
Okay.
They only can be brought back if they're put on IR the following day on Wednesday. So that part. So if you start hearing that X player placed on injured reserve, like that safety was put on injured reserve over the weekend, he's done, for the season. Then you're going to see other guys cut. Maybe you see somebody get traded or whatever. But the roster, I think, won't be complete, and maybe not even till Green Bay week. In fact, to go back to Tevin Jenkins, they don't have to put him on IR Wednesday if they're going to put him on IR. They can put him on IR the day before the Green Bay game, and it doesn't change a thing. He still misses 4 games.
Okay.
So it's not 4 weeks, it's 4 games. So it's not like he gets that week with no game by being put on, unless they change the rule, if they put him on, say, next Wednesday or Thursday.
Regarding the injuries up front, Herb Howard had a really good question at today's press conference, so I'm going to include it here. So to give you better context than I can provide, this entire sequence is about a minute long, and it has to do with how the coaching staff will respond to players who may not be ready for game 1 and beyond.
You've obviously had a plan based around the personnel that you had in terms of coming into this season. As that time gets nearer and you have so many of your frontline guys that are not full go right now, do you start to concern yourself with the possibility of having to then shift that plan in terms of how you go about certain schemes?
That's a good question. You want to be at full health, obviously, the start of the season, and we're going to look at that, in a day-to-day basis. But what this gives us is an opportunity to see different combinations. We all know what we would like to have the starting lineup up to look like with the guys that we have. But again, that's going to change during the course of the season. So now it really helps the coaches to be able to have the flexibility, and the players to have the flexibility to move from guard to center, center to guard, or tackle, and really, establish who your swing tackle is. So you got to look at it as an opportunity. It is what it is, so you got to look at it and see how can you benefit from that. And then get the guys back as fast as you can with the medical staff and the trainers.
I love the question, love the response. This is an opportunity to see what are the possibilities, even throughout the course of the season. If a player goes down, moving a player here, moving a player there, based on what you've seen at practices and preseason games. So, in your experience, this is fairly common, isn't it? This is what you do during when planning for a season.
Yeah. Now, don't forget, you got almost 3 full weeks still until opening day. There's a lot of practice time. So, you don't have the 4th preseason game. I think the media and fans tend to overreact, and the coaches the coaches know right now when guys are going to be ready to go, pretty much so. And they plan accordingly. And they know what the injury is. They know what the status of the injury is. They're not going to show their hand. But I'm going to say, just based on the way guys have played and how they've used guys, that just about everybody except Tevin, because we don't know the answer to that, is going to be good to go. And and I don't agree with Michael saying that Whitehair was not good last year at guard. I don't believe. I think he's better at center, but I don't believe wasn't good at guard last year. The offensive line did not pass protect real well last year, but most of that was from the outside, not the inside. And the run blocking from the offensive line was excellent. So and you can have a breakdown here and a breakdown there. Yeah, every team in the league is going to have that. If you're looking for perfection, you're not going to get it. One other thing too about procedures for next week, the practice squad can't be set until now. I'm not sure the time this year. I read the rule. The rule said you can start re-signing players to the practice squad immediately after every team receives the waiver wire from Wednesday morning or that went out from cuts and stuff. And so it used to be the last, at least 20 years, it's been noon the day after the following cut, but they moved the final cut up. And so is it going to be noon, or is it going to be a full 24-hour claim period instead of noon, and then you got to wait till 3:00? I mean, it's really neither here nor there. You got to wait for the waiver wire to come out from Tuesday's cuts, but to see who got claimed, if somebody got claimed. And then if they didn't get claimed, then you re-sign them. You can re-sign the guys you want to the practice squad. Now, the league notifies you. You don't even need the waiver wire confirms it in writing. But let's say they cut, we'll throw out a name here. They cut Leatherwood. Let's say, and he's eligible to go on the practice squad. So let's say that happened. Then the league would call them and say, Green Bay claimed Leatherwood. So they're going to know. Okay. And, and it's, they might find out if the cutoff time is noon on Wednesday, they might know at 11:00 or whatever, so it's, they're not going to know hours in advance, because the team has right up to that time, to put in literally till about a half hour before to put in the claim. But the league is really efficient in letting you know if you lost guys via claims. And the Bears can put in, they got the number one claim, so they don't have to put in priority claims. In other words, if they were like 8th or 9th and they wanted to claim a tackle, and they'd say, they'd look at the waiver wire and say, okay, there's 3 tackles they like. So they can prioritize them. I want this guy first, that guy second, this guy third. And depending on where you are in the pecking order, and if the guy got claimed by another team, if he got claimed by a team that's higher than you, then that's where that priority comes in. So you lose number 1 and go to number 2. Well, this year they don't have that problem. They're number 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. They got first dibs on everybody through game 3.
Right.
And after game 3, it changes. So, but it'll be interesting that they've already claimed some guys. It'll be interesting to see if they claim anybody. The beauty of having the cut on Tuesday instead of Saturday is it gives you a few days of practice with a guy you claim, and if you don't like him, you get rid of him.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Let's talk about Alex Leatherwood. You just put the hypothetical up there. What have they cut Leatherwood? Jordan
Cost
would
of money,
love to,
that's for sure.
That's right. Jordan would love to see Leatherwood play at left tackle, but that he knows that that's not going to happen. What are your thoughts about Leatherwood? How you mentioned briefly, that he looked pretty good at left guard, but what do you think about what his immediate future is with the Chicago Bears?
Well, he's not as good as Carter. So I would say right off the bat, Carter's the swing guard, but has Carter, I don't know if Carter's practiced on the left side. He's only played on the right side.
Right.
Used to keep only 8 offensive linemen. The last few years, most teams have kept 9.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you got to have some guys that can play more than one position. And like with Kramer's a center only.
Mm-hmm.
And with the injury situation the way it is, that's what tells me if there's something really wrong with Tevin, he may go on IR only because of numbers. Okay, but again, I don't know what the severity is. So I'm throwing shit at the wall like everybody else is. But if it's not that severe, it'll be fine. But you just look, you got to have your depth right going in to game day. And most teams want to only dress 7 offensive linemen,
Mm-hmm.
which means your 2 backups have to be able to play 2 positions.
Mm.
And right now, if you got Patrick playing center and Kramer's, because he's another center, you got to have him active. So does that mean, if say a guard got hurt, you put Kramer in at center and Patrick at right guard, because that's some of the stuff you got to think about flexibility wise when you're making your active roster for Sunday. And the guy that's the backup tackle has to be able to play both sides.
Mm.
And we've seen so far Collins and Borum play both sides. The guy who's been better on the left side, in my opinion, so far is Collins. But we still got one more game, and they're going to get a lot of reps again this week against Buffalo. And Buffalo's got some pretty good pass rushers on that defense. So, it'll be interesting to see how that game plays out.
Yeah, the thing about Collins that is valuable is that he also has experience playing at the guard position. He's played all 4 of the offensive line positions. He has not played center ever in an NFL game, but in NFL games, he's played left, right guard, left tackle, right tackle, and so that's valuable to have a 30-year-old guy with that experience. I know that the Bears like them young, but given the state of the tackle position, perhaps bringing in a guy who's got that versatility, he's got that experience, he might be a better swing tackle candidate than some of the younger guys.
Yeah, again, we're not gonna know the answer until a week from today.
Mm-hmm.
When you see who gets cut. And then, like I say, we're not even gonna know then because there might be 4 or 5 different what the roster looks like at 3:00 on Thursday isn't going to be the way the roster looks on Friday.
Right.
So there'll probably be 3, 4, 5 different names in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wait and see.
And speaking of the roster, everyone has been commenting on whether free agent signing Tyson Bagent is it? Whether he should make Bagent, there you go. Whether he should make the roster as the 2nd or 3rd string quarterback. I put together highlights of that sensational drive that he let, just matriculating the ball downfield with short passes. What are your thoughts about what you have seen out of this young Division II quarterback from Shepherd?
I'm going to be honest, and I'm not trying to throw a little hyperbole here.
Mm-hmm.
He's played better than any of the first-round quarterbacks. Okay, that's fact. I've watched all of them. I've watched every snap of all of them, and none of them have jumped out. This guy has statistically and poise-wise actually played better. Now, is it comparing apples to apples? Not really, because it depends on who you're playing against. And in the case of the Colts, both coaches got together and made a decision. Hey, we're not playing most of our starters. So starters played during the week, and they started with the twos. So he gets in with the twos and the threes. So he's going against twos and threes. But at the same time, very calm, very poised, just the way he was at the line of scrimmage. The way he was directing traffic and calling guys to come in motion and making sure the formation's correct. His pre-snap reads, he gets the ball out of his hand really quickly. And a lot of times he was throwing to his first read, but the first read was open. So why don't you throw? That's what you're supposed to throw to. So, no, I've been surprised. So I went back and, I wrote about it in Windy City Gridiron. And, this goes back to when I first came in the league, and I'm working for the Giants. And, there was the rule of thumb was you wanted a guy, when you took a quarterback, you wanted a 2 to 3 year starter and preferably a 3. And now teams weren't throwing the ball as much as they do now back then, but you wanted 900 passing attempts. Okay, so 2 to 3 years of starting, 900 passing attempts. That meant you played a lot of football. You saw a lot as a starting quarterback. Okay, well, this guy started for 4 years every game and threw 2,040 passes. He's like 2.5 times what the minimum was, what we were looking for. Yeah. And then on top of that, his career completion percentage was 68.6. So now, granted, he's playing Division II, but I know the league he played in. Shepherd's from West Virginia, but they play in the Pennsylvania Athletic Conference, which is Edinburgh, Cheney State, Kutztown State, those schools. And there's guys every year that come into the league from that league. It's a real good Division II league. Oh, Chris Valerio was a longtime guard. He was here when I first came here. He played was he at Kutztown or Slippery Rock? One of those. Big Cat was from Cheney State. You could probably find Andre Reed, who's in the Hall of Fame, was from Kutztown. A ton of players who played in that league. It's good football. It's a long way from Power 5, but the coaching in that league is pretty darn good. And so
also, Greg, the reality is that less than 4% of the NFL teams, less than 4% of the active NFL players from last season were from Division II schools, and there was not a single quarterback on any roster last season from a Division II school. So they represent the vast minority, and especially when it comes down to quarterbacks, virtually none.
Okay, now I'll throw another thing I was waiting for. I had it in my back pocket. Two Power 5 schools wanted him to transfer in. He turned them down.
Right. And the reason
Maryland and West Virginia, which, by the way, are arch rivals.
Right. But the reason why was because he was considering going into the transfer portal program, but those schools told him you're going to miss graduation this year because you've got to make up like 15 credit hours when you transfer, when he only needed one more credit hour at Shepherd. So he immediately looked at his father, and his father said, when he looked at me, I knew immediately he wasn't going to transfer. He was going to finish at Shepherd. So you're right that there were a Division I schools that were interested in him, but he was so dedicated to getting his degree at Shepherd that's why he said no. My issue with all of the clamor for this kid, and I like the kid. I love his demeanor. I love his poise. I love his arm strength, is that he still was an undrafted free agent. He still, if you read the scouting reports from last year, he still tends to panic a bit in the pocket when he's under pressure. If you look at those plays.
Did you see him panic in the first 2 games?
Well, but he didn't have any pressure. The offensive line did an outstanding job when he was in there. Plus, Rashawn Johnson was absolutely phenomenal. He had 30 yards rushing on that one drive. And so there was a great mixture of running plays and quick passing plays, getting rid of the ball quickly. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be the number 2 or number 3 quarterback.
Well, I don't know if he deserves to be the number 2 yet. I'm not ready to jump there. He's going to be on the 53 because there's no way he doesn't get claimed if you cut him. He's played
I question that a little bit, just simply because.
Don't forget he was in the Senior Bowl. He was in, so it's not like he was an unknown quantity. He got invited to the Senior Bowl.
But nobody drafted him, and so
they didn't draft him because he was Division II, and Division II quarterbacks don't get drafted. Well, Kurt Warner was a 1AA who didn't get drafted. Tony Romo was a ultra productive guy down the road at Eastern Illinois. He didn't get drafted.
Right.
I remember Tony Romo when he's going into his senior year. He already had an agent. He just didn't officially have an agent. He had CAA and he had Kramer and Tom Condon, and he was at our camp for 2 days. He was with those guys from CAA, and watching practice. Great guy. Put up big numbers, but he didn't get drafted. And again, it has to do with, the level of comp. But when you can get a guy as a free agent, why draft him?
Yeah. I know there's a dearth of quarterbacks in the National Football League, but I took a look at all of the quarterback rosters for all 31 other NFL teams. And to me, it just seems like most of those teams, the vast majority of those teams, and maybe every single one of them, is probably going to be in love with the third string quarterback that they have on their depth chart and not want to bring in a developmental draft pick because they've got a developmental draft pick on their roster. And the sample size of what Bagent has done in the NFL is so small, it would be so risky to pick this kid out and place him on your 53-man roster. I just think
the third quarterback. It's actually you put him on your roster. You can be you almost. I got to get the rules straight because they changed it for this year. It's like he's a 54th man, and you can dress him on Sunday, but it can't be a gimmick guy. It's got to be a pure quarterback. I don't know the exact rule. I've liked what I've seen so far, and then the comment, assistant director of player personnel, he was on the pregame show, and they're talking about it. He said, "This is the guy I want to see." So obviously, he's done enough. He's done a lot of stuff in practice. I'm reading between the lines here, and I know how people think on these things. And when you got, director of player personnel saying, I want to watch him closely, that says that they're liking what they see. And don't forget, Getsy coached this guy in the Senior Bowl, so that was like a hand-picked guy.
I bet, yes.
And I think here's what I think was going on draft day. They're calling the guy and finding out, and they're talking to his agent. Is anybody calling you about drafting you? Because instead of taking the tackle from down in Georgia, from Kennesaw State, Bell, they could have very well taken this guy with the last pick. If they felt, because that was right near the end, there's only a couple picks left. If they felt they were in danger of losing the guy. I know the games you play. You try to get it with a guy like that. You try to get the deal done. Shit, the deal might have been done the day before for all we know. Now, are they could ever admit to that? Never, because it's illegal. But have I done it? Yes. And I plead the fifth. I never said that. No, I mean, shit, it was 20 years ago. Who cares? But it's they do it. It happens all over. So I think it'll be interesting how they come off the bench Saturday afternoon. Who's going to be number 2 after? Because I'm pretty sure Justin Fields is going to play in probably about a quarter and a half.
Yeah,
that's
what Eberflus said to that was, we'll determine how the offensive line looks. So if he's concerned that the offensive line is not looking good this week because of injury or bad practices, he might sit Justin Fields. But please go ahead.
No, but I think they want him to get some reps with some of these guys. So, but who's coming in next? PJ Walker, and I like PJ because he was the guy we wanted in the XFL, but that was the XFL. But he put some good numbers up down at Carolina when he had to play, and so is he just not entirely in tune with what they want offensive wise? Because the guy who looks like he's had experience is Bagent, not PJ Walker. So it's just and Peterman hasn't looked bad.
He looked really good in that series against the Colts, and I thought he had a great chance to lead them back to a comeback. And even Walker, while he has not looked good, and I have not gone out to any of the practices, the word is he has not looked good in practice, but that first or second series, the second series against the Colts this week, he did nothing wrong. He threw a pass to an open Equinemius St. Brown who dropped it. He had bad protection.
That was on third down. It was like on 3rd and 15, and it was an 8-yard throw. Dropping the ball meant nothing because it was still punting on. Granted, it was a drop, and that's a check against EQ, but it wasn't going to be a first down. They're punting the next play anyway.
Unless EQ would have broken that tackle, you're absolutely right. He would have been a couple of yards shy of the sticks. But, I just feel like even a veteran quarterback like a PJ Walker, a guy who had high expectations for this season and he's disappointed, I think it's in time he will get a better sense of the offense. He will, just get better. Now, again, I'm not saying this because Bagent is somebody that I dislike. I like him a lot. I want him to be a Bear. I want developmental quarterbacks who look like he did on Saturday night. He looked really good. But at the same time, we also have to consider what happens if Justin's going to miss a game or two, and we're striving to make the playoffs with a 9 or 10 win season. So you got to consider that.
I think there's going to be 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I mean that, and I think now here's what I never thought he was even in consideration for number 2. Until Flus made one comment after the game. It's still an open competition for number 2.
Yeah.
That tells you he was a little pissed.
Yeah.
Or concerned, whatever. If he doesn't make that comment, I don't, but he purposely made the comment.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned about this coaching staff is that they will say or do things like that to light a fire under a player's butt.
No question. Yeah. And so it's going to be, hey, PJ, shit or get off the pot this week.
Yes, exactly. All right. What about Equinemius St. Brown? It's getting to the point now where I understand he's a very good special teams player, and he's a very good downfield blocker as a wide receiver. But I look at Doris Fountain. He's got similar size. He's a little bit shorter, 6'1", 220 pounds. He's got great leaping skills, great broad jump. I posted that up on the Barroom Network Twitter account. He's got 4.46 speed. He has popped in and out of rosters, practice squad with the Colts, and then a year ago with the Chiefs.
He started out with Kansas City, yeah.
Yeah,
Did he
no,
start
he
with the
he was drafted in the 5th round by the Colts, and then
Okay.
2 seasons later he was signed by the Chiefs. So I like this player. I love his attitude. He has been described as a locker room type leader, very hungry. I gotta believe that he's fighting EQ for a roster spot. Your thoughts?
No, I don't disagree. In fact, I even did a little research, this morning, knowing that this would come up, because I agree with you. Money-wise, it's just about a push. There's an $85,000 cap charge if you release EQ, but the base salary, it's minimal. I mean, we're talking $100,000, $125,000 difference. So regardless of who you keep, it's not going to affect what your cap is. And don't think for a second that cap costs don't come into play with some of this stuff. And so if a guy's got a decent salary and they don't want him, I shouldn't say this shit publicly, and they don't want him on the roster, they can find a convenient injury for him this week, because then you're not hitting the cap. Then you're not getting hit with the cap charge. Okay, perfect example is Leatherwood. Leatherwood, it cost them some, because when they claimed him on waivers, they claimed that 1st round pick contract. Okay, it's not like if he would have passed through waivers and then they signed him, they would have had him a lot cheaper. But I pulled this stuff up. Let me just
Sure.
We waited till 3:30, and I'm going to be coughing because that's when it starts.
Air quality is a little better, so hopefully that's helping you. But it's not.
But no, it's still, I still got it. Okay, there's almost $4.6 million in dead money if you cut Alex Leatherwood.
That's a lot.
Okay, you put him on IR, there's no dead money.
That's right. Somebody get a sledgehammer.
Just and that stuff makes a difference when you want to, re-sign somebody down the road.
Yeah. All right. I want to switch topics here quickly and get you to answer this question in the most polite way that you can. What do you say to people who are clamoring for the Bears to make a trade with the Colts for Jonathan Taylor?
Did you see my tweet last night? The idiot from Indianapolis to put that out. It's like, the Bears just practiced down there and ran all over those guys all week.
That's right. All week. That's right.
All week. So it's like this, and then he says they got the cap space. How about the Colts got more cap space than the Bears?
Oh, I didn't know
Right
that.
now.
Look at that.
Yeah. Like $1 million or $1.5 million. So do I think he's going to get traded? No. I think they gave him permission to try to work out a deal, which means that the agent can theoretically negotiate,
right.
with another team. Okay, what kind of deal? They're going to find out he's going to get shit.
Exactly.
He's a running back.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate truth.
I mean, look at the money Cook got, and he's what, a 3-time? He's not old, and he's a 3-time Pro Bowler. And how about this? Taylor. I like Taylor. He's a hell of a back.
Yep.
He's also hurt. He's not even ready to play. When's he going to be ready to play? Running backs, they hate it. Be a linebacker. Don't be a running back. Because running backs don't get paid anymore.
That
was the glamour position. Not anymore.
What do you know about the Steelers' offensive lineman Kevin Dotson? He is on the final year of his rookie contract. He's actually a left tackle, I believe. At least that's the highlights that I saw of him. But there's word that he may not make the starting lineup, and because of his rookie contract, the Steelers might release him in the 53 if the Bears wanted to pick up a offensive lineman. Do you know anything about Dotson?
No, I'd have to go look at tape and see if he's a fit, because people want him like Dalton Risner's out there. We've probably seen that name 1,000 times this week. He's not a fit. I don't see him as a fit.
Right.
And last spring there was a lot of people banging the wall for Orlando Brown.
Mm-hmm.
You got to learn what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not athletic, they don't want you. There was a thing today. People saying they should have drafted the kid from the center from Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of Gervon Dexter, because of the center thing. He's not a fit. He can't play in space.
Yeah.
He's a power, and he's a good player. I love the player, but he can't play in this scheme.
Yeah. What do you make of the play of Gervon Dexter so far in these 2 preseason games? It looks like he's been up and down.
No, I think he has a tendency to get a high pad level, but he's strong as an ox. You don't knock him off the line of scrimmage. He occupies people. He finds the ball. The run defense is better in the pass rush, which tells so you're not going to see him in there on passing downs that often early on until but he's got the athleticism to be a good pass rusher. So it's going to be a work in progress. I mean, the guy Pickens is ahead of him.
Yes,
there's no question, and Pickens is ready to go. It'll be interesting. They want to, if you look at what they've done in the past, Flus wants 8 defensive linemen. So 4 ends and 4 interior guys. And DeMarcus Walker can play inside on passing downs. So he's like a swing guy. It's who's your 4th end going to be?
Right.
Robinson's going to be there. Ngakoue is going to be there. And I think Travis Gibson's going to be there. So now Green or Lewis,
yeah.
And so and now today, Flus kind of praised Green. I don't think Green's played very well myself.
Yeah, I was surprised that he praised.
I'm not seeing practice. And practice comes into this. But in the games, he has not played well. And Lewis, I thought, played better versus the run this week than he did the previous week. He was awful against the run the previous week. But he can rush the passer. And that has value. Now you look at the money, because money comes into this stuff too. And I had it here. I just got to go through it, so bear with me.
Sure. Yeah, ready to
DeMarcus Walker has, or not DeMarcus Walker, Green we want. Rasheed Green, okay, he's got dead money of $850,000.
That's nothing.
Which is not too bad. And he's got a cap charge. His cap figure this year, or his cap number this year, is $2.7 million. And you pick up, if you cut him, wait a minute, I read the wrong guy again now because my thing is skipping. His cap number is $2.47 million.
Okay.
You have $850,000 of dead money, but you pick up $1.6 million in cap space by letting him go. And if you keep Terrell Lewis, he's costing you just over $1 million in salary. And So there's a savings in keeping him. I think Gibson has earned his spot.
Yeah.
He's been a very good player. At least in the 2 games, he's been a very good player. And if he's practicing anywhere close to the way he's been playing, it's a given.
Yeah. It's interesting that when, they released that first depth chart, had him in the depth chart.
But the coaches have, in all honesty, I think we talked about, they have nothing to say with that.
Yeah, but I got a feeling
put that shit out.
But it's interesting how he immediately started playing much better when he saw that, so maybe that was a way of lighting a fire under his butt. And regarding Zach Pickens, I got these 2 plays from early in that Colts game. There he is in the middle, right over the center at that one tech. And he does such a nice job here of pushing away the left guard and making the tackle on the running back. And then on the next play, he reads the screen play here.
That was a good play.
Yeah, this is really, really special what he's doing here. He's keeping his eyes on the quarterback and immediately reacts to the running back, Evan Hall, I believe, from Northwestern. Here's the end zone look at it. So this guy, people have been asking me who's going to play better this season, Dexter or Pickens. I keep saying Dexter, but now I'm starting to change my mind a little bit. I think Pickens is ready for a lot of snaps at that interior defensive tackle position.
Well, he hasn't played the 3 in games. I can't tell you what he's done in practice. He's been playing the 1, the same as Billings. But from an athletic point of view, he's very capable of playing the 3.
Yep.
And you can move DeMarcus Walker inside to play the 3 on passing downs too. So they've got a lot of combination. It's just who's the 4th defensive end.
Yeah.
And I based on what I've seen, it's not Green, it's Lewis. Yeah. So, but that's my opinion.
Getting back to
it won't get you a thing.
Well, you get a lot of respect for your opinion. I know that. Getting back to Gervon Dexter just for one moment here, I heard Yurko on ESPN 1000 saying this was after the first preseason game and before the second one. He was wondering why the heck Dexter was in a 4-point stance for most of his plays, his snaps out there. What do you think about him being with that 4-point stance, and shouldn't that be coached out of him at the pro level?
I think he's comfortable with it probably, and they're letting him go with it, and they don't give a damn one way or the other.
Okay, because the knock on the 4-point stance is that since you got both hands on the turf, you're going to be a little slower in getting your hands up to beat the offensive lineman's hands to get to his chest. Which is why you usually see the 3-point stance. Do you agree with that?
I don't necessarily agree with that, because if you're in a 4-point stance, and a defensive tackle is going to punch like an offensive lineman is going to punch. You want to get your hands on there. You got the hands there. It's just a matter of boom, real quick with your hand. Where the other one, you got your hand back. So your hand actually, your hand that's not in the dirt is actually got to come a little further.
That's a good point.
Okay, so I think if the coaching staff cared, you wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
Yeah. Interesting, because Yurko was like, yeah, that's got to be coached.
Well, he's a defensive line. He's a defensive lineman. So, he's going to have his thoughts. I'm just, when stuff like this comes up, I just try to, go back to my own experience and then, okay, what would a good D-line coach, and I'm impressed with this defensive line coach. I think he does a hell of a job.
Okay.
What if a guy's doing that? First of all, if you don't want him to do it, you coach it out of him, like your coach said. But you wouldn't let him do it. But they're letting him do it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's like they don't care. They're good with it.
Yeah, certainly seems that way. One of the players I wanted to talk to you about is the 7th-round acquisition, the safety Kendall Williamson from Stanford. There were a lot of good scouting notes on him, and special teams coach Hightower talked about Williamson, and I wanted to play that for you and get your thoughts on the possibility of this young man making the roster.
He is fast. He's big. He's versatile because he can play inside in the interior and he can play outside in the perimeter. Usually, when you get some positions, they can only play one or the other. But he's big enough to play inside, and he's fast enough to play outside, like where the corners and the receivers are, like the gunners and the vice guys. So that's what we like about him. Obviously, he had to tackle on punt in the game. And he's one of the first guys down on kickoff all the time. So he's doing a really nice job. But again, he has to continue to grow. Like it's all a learning phase for all those guys, especially with those rookies. So what I can tell you about Kendall Williamson is he is a gym rat, and he is always asking for cut-ups, tape. What do these Pro Bowl players, how did they do it? How did they make it? How did they survive in this league? He's like at my door like this, like all the time. So I'm glad he made a tackle.
It's I brought him up because there's an injury now to Jalen Jones, who I've been touting, and his special teams play and so forth. And so if he's out for any amount of time, first of all, he's got to make the team. But Kendall Williamson might be a good replacement for him, at least on special teams. Your thoughts?
Well, they're going to keep 8 or 9 DBs.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually like 5 corners, 4 safeties,
mm-hmm.
or 4 and 4. So who are your 2 backup safeties? So he's one of them.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
yeah.
and the kid who got drafted last year. So I think that was the plan going in. Mm-hmm. Just to back up a little bit, the coaches have in their mind their own, like when camp starts, their own depth chart. This is how we see the 53 breaking out at the end of camp. And, somebody's got, it's like a fight. Somebody's got to come in and knock the guy out for that guy to lose the job.
Right. Like the old heavyweights fights.
Right.
Fights.
And so, the rookie last year, I can't remember his name, and Hicks and Williamson, they've had decent preseasons, and they fit the mold. Both can play special teams. So I think that's your backup safeties.
Mm-hmm.
Jones obviously was in the picture. I don't know what his injury is, but obviously was in the picture, excuse me, to be a backup corner. I don't know who the backup nickel is.
Yeah.
Now, number 25, who was a free agent rookie from Tulane, and I looked at his numbers, and he ran like 4.6 at the pro day, but everything else was pretty decent. He was playing that nickel spot Saturday night.
Macon Clark.
Yeah. And, whether he's the guy, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Swift has a gut feeling that it's Greg Stroman Jr. as a backup.
And it could be. And there's some good competition at the corner position. What's his name? OJ Mudia? He's had a decent season. He's played in the league, and you got the kids from last year, Jones, who I thought played well. You had the kid from Duke who played good. Stroman, and there's guys there. It'll be interesting who they come up with.
Yep.
And don't forget, what we see in preseason games is just a little bit. They put a ton into what they do in practice, how they are in meetings, what they can do on teams. All these backups, especially at the the corner, linebacker, wide receiver, safety, they all got to be able to play teams.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those guys could be decent players, but they can't play teams. And if they can't play teams, in other words, I'm saying, like, if there's not a big fall off between the fifth and sixth corner, and you're going to keep 5 corners, and the sixth guy on your depth chart is the better teams player, the sixth guy is making your team, not the fifth guy.
Yeah. I wanted to also touch on the fact that there was a long list of players who did not practice today, Tuesday, August 22nd. But the good news is, Greg, is that Tremaine Edmonds is back on the practice field. He didn't do much there. They got him in that ramp up period. So he probably won't see action against Buffalo, but he's ramping up. And so he will definitely be ready for game 1 unless there's some kind of a setback. And Eddie Jackson is said to be close to getting back into that ramp-up period, as well as Jaquan Brisker and Chase Claypool. So that's good news.
Well, Claypool was running routes before the game on Saturday.
Yeah, so I'd love to see him play on Saturday, but that's probably not going to happen.
They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They're going to. There's certain guys they want ready to go game 1, and there's some they don't want tape on them. Tape gets exchanged.
Yeah.
Practice is good enough.
Yeah.
Let Green Bay worry about what these guys are going to be doing.
Anything else you want to share with us regarding the 53-man roster and waiver claims and IRs? I know you've already given us a good primer. I just wanted to make sure you've shared with us as much as
people. They go, who do I think is going to make it and stuff, and I go, well, first of all, it doesn't matter who I think. There's always going to be a couple surprises, and I just can't reiterate enough. Money will play into some of these. Okay, because there's 3 guys that they may want to get new deals done before the season's out, and you got to have money to do that. And right now, you're getting a little tight because you're sitting with $15 million. Now, some of that will go up. That figure will go up next week because there's going to be guys coming off that you're going to pick, that got some pretty decent salaries that you're going to pick up money on.
Exactly.
So the 15, it might be 18, 19 million or something, but still, when you want to redo a couple contracts and you need money for injured players, for injury buyouts, for practice squad. I mean, practice squad costs you a pretty good chunk of change.
It does.
Okay,
right.
So all that comes out of the cap. So you got to have money to spare, so to speak, and before you can even think about doing some of these extensions.
Let's tackle some of these questions before we get out of here. Eric would love to know, we talked about Pickens and Dexter already, but he wants to know, are you surprised that we've been seeing Pickens at the 1T and Dexter at the 3 tackle position? It was supposed to be most people thought that it was going to be the other way around, that we see Pickens at the 3 tech and Dexter at the 1 tech. What are your thoughts?
I don't disagree with that. I thought it was going to be Gervon at the 1 and again, we're not seeing everything in practice.
Right.
They might be flip-flopping a lot in practice, but in the games showing that, look, is there a huge difference between the two? Well, it is on, how you're going to take on people, what your immediate assignment is. But I don't think it would be that difficult for them to flip-flop. And they might have to once the season starts. One thing, they're both going to be on the roster. So, and I even looked because we haven't even seen Jones in the preseason. I just thought, well, somebody's going to get cut that you don't want to get cut, and a guy who's jumped out is Travis Bell.
Yeah.
Okay. So
one of the questions, yeah.
And could he get claimed? Well, He's a defensive lineman that's pretty athletic and has had a pretty good preseason. And trust me, you watch the tape on these guys. And when a guy jumps out, you know, and if you got an opportunity to claim him, I mean, it depends what you got yourself. But on the other hand, nobody's ever been drafted before from Kennesaw State, and he was like the 4th last pick in the draft. So, and I think he's 24, so he's a little bit on the older side. I don't know. Like I said last week, I said, shit, I wouldn't play him anymore. But they're almost forced to because they get, you know, there's guys they're you know, holding out. Kept all the ones out last week because they practiced.
Indeed.
You know, and personally, I agreed with that. I know some didn't. I thought, what the hell? Remember, I said this is like mini games.
Yeah.
And that's and Flus ended up saying things. It's like a game.
Yeah, he confirmed that. Indeed.
Yeah. So it's they saw what they wanted to see. They got good quality reps.
Yeah. Swifty wants to know how many. What's the max number of defensive linemen you think that Poles and Eberflus will keep on the 53? Could it get up to 9 defensive linemen?
I mean, I'm not going to say it couldn't. I'm going to say you're cutting it short somewhere else.
Yeah, and if you're going to keep 3 quarterbacks,
yeah, you know, the best way is find an injury.
Get that sledgehammer.
They've had 6 weeks of practice. So is it going to hurt the development on a guy? Now you can't fake it because the league can call you in and say, we want to examine this kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so there's got to be something.
Right.
The best things are good pulls because then, you know, it's tougher to, it's more subjective, put it that way. But I some of these guys I wouldn't want to lose because you see the upside. And one is Bell. I just, you know, when I got him, I looked at tape and you know, he dominated that level of competition, but he was also very, very raw. But you could just see in between the off-season program, you know, OTAs, what they learned in the off-season program, what he learned at camp. I mean, just his technique is like 1,000% better than it was when you saw him on tape from Kennesaw State. And the guy's got a motor.
He does have a motor, and he's Poles loves his character too. That's another thing about
right. I mean, but you're not going to cut Jones. Jones kills you on the cap if you cut him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just to pick out a name because he hasn't played.
Yeah.
And I told you I'm going to start coughing. That's.
Well, we'll pull the plug here very quickly.
Okay.
Let me get one.
I can go a few more minutes. Just that you might have to deal with me getting a little cough here and there.
It's totally okay. Let me squeeze in a couple of more questions here. Larry T wants to know your take on Kindle Vildor. Do you think he's a potential cap casualty? Do you think he makes this team? You know, I got a feeling that injuries might dictate whether he makes this team or not. If there
based on how he's been used in the preseason, I think he's history.
Yeah, it's looking that way, huh?
No, he has been like the last man in.
Wow.
You know, so now does he have any trade value? Maybe. You know, based on last year. But you're talking an if comes 7th. Okay, and you got to have more than one team interested.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so theoretically he gets waived. And one other thing too, I should have mentioned back. Don't forget, you know, in waivers, the Bears have the first claim priority.
Right.
But that's with waived players. Vested veterans do not go through waivers.
That's important.
They are free agents a minute after they get cut.
Yeah, that's a huge point, which I always forget when a vested veteran is
So
cut.
a vested veteran gets cut next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
3:00, it's official. At 3:05, he can sign somewhere else.
There you go.
He doesn't have to wait for the 24-hour claiming period or anything else. He is a free agent to make a deal.
J2K wants to know if Doug Kramer is cut. Do you think he makes it through waivers, given that he is a center only? There's a good chance he would make it through waivers.
Yeah, I would think he's going to make it through waivers because there's really not. He got hurt last year and he was on IR.
Right.
Even though he's played pretty good this year, but the thing is, if you cut him, who's your backup center going into the game? Now, can you cut him and bring him back? In the next, I mean, you're going to bring him back to the practice squad and then bring him up for the game.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you can do that. But, yeah, I'll leave it that way. It wouldn't surprise me if they cut him. But he's not, I can't see him getting claimed. You put him on the practice squad, and then you bring him up for the first game.
Adam Schefter reported today that Tariq Cohen is looking for a job. He claims that he is fully healthy. What are your thoughts about bringing him back? He's obviously an outstanding punt returner. Is a position that the Bears could use some help in. What do you think about Tariq Cohen getting another look with the Chicago Bears? Out of the question, or maybe?
I think it's out of the question. I think this crew, before he popped that Achilles, and I think we all saw that tape. That was like, wow. Yes. This crew could have had him a year ago. And, they passed. Now, I don't know if I assume the Bears doctors did the surgery and stuff. He had a house here and he sold it just within the last couple months.
Right.
Whether local doctors did the Achilles surgery, I don't know. The knee, pretty sure was the Bears doctors. They know how that is. The knee's probably good to go. It's the Achilles, and is he still as explosive? Now, Achilles surgery is so much better now than it was even 10 years ago. Guys come back faster. They come back with equal speed, equal explosiveness. If you got a good surgeon.
Right.
So I could see him getting tryouts and signed to a team. Is it going to be in the next week or two? Maybe not. Probably not. But I could even see him being put on a practice squad because you could be you could be a veteran put on a practice squad, and now you're going to get a couple weeks to work with them.
Yeah, my gut feel is that the Bears won't take a look at him, but he should get some interest from a couple of teams in the NFL.
Well, the first thing he's got to do is pass the medical.
Right.
So until he passes the medical, it's a moot point. He said he's been cleared and he's 100%. But of course they're going to say that, and I'm just devil's advocate here. The doctor from Team A may say he's good to go, and the doctor from Team B say, nope. There's something we didn't, don't like about the surgery. Maybe in the knee there's a little bit of laxity or something like this, because they don't want to get caught paying for him again if he goes down.
Yeah. Kay has an interesting point here. Not many waived players better than this improved roster. That's obviously a highly debatable statement, but I think if you want to look at it from his standpoint or Kay's standpoint, I'm not sure if Kay is a man or a woman, but if you want to look at it from that standpoint, there could be a lot of truth to that, because there are some quality players that the Chicago Bears are going to have to waive for one reason or another. And I always get back to that point where coaches fall in love with the players they've had in camp. They know the system. They've gone through the trials and tribulations of getting ready for the 2023 season. It's going to take a really bad assessment of a position group for the Bears to say, okay, we're going to drop this guy to pick up that guy, is my opinion.
Well, no, that's where your pro scouting department comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
And how good are they? And do you trust them? Last year, they made claims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if they see a guy that they watched on tape and they like, and they say he's better than so-and-so, then they could theoretically put a claim on him. And somebody's got to think about offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive lineman doesn't have to be claimed. We just mentioned about the vets.
Right.
Could be a vested vet that gets cut.
Right.
Okay. And he's a better option. And now you're working out a brand new contract because you're not claiming the contract. The minute he gets cut, the contract he was under becomes null and void.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned Dalton Rice not being a fit for the Bears offensive lineman. I do got to tell you that when I saw him down at the Senior Bowl, I was just amazed with the mauler type of player that he was. He plays with a mean streak. Reminded me a little bit of Tevin Jenkins, but Tevin is much better athlete. So again, out of the question that Dalton might get a look at by the Chicago Bears if these offensive lineman injury problems persist.
Not out of the question. It's what do you got to pay for him?
Yeah, and it appears he's holding out for money.
Well, the point is, he's not going to get what he wants.
Right.
But, I mean, look at Ngakoue. Ngakoue waited until he got, the money he wanted. He got $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're down to the final countdown. And, so it's a little bit different story because you're not going to have him in camp. You got to line them up and play them. But he's still, I'm going to say at minimum, he's going to cost you $4 million.
Yeah.
And I might be light on that.
Yeah. I was going to guess $5 to $6 million.
Well, that's why I said at minimum.
Yeah.
I'm sure he wants 6 to 7. I don't know if that's out there. And it could be. I mean, it depends on the situation and how much you like the guys you got.
There's going to be a lot more.
I'll bring this up too.
Sure.
Because it's important with a veteran. If a vested veteran is on your 53-man roster for the first game, his salary's guaranteed for the whole year.
The whole year.
Okay, so you cut him, you're still paying him. Unless somebody else picks him up, you're still paying him. You're on the hook for that.
Yeah.
Now you wait till after the first. So now you wait till the day after the Green Bay game.
All right.
Now you sign a vet. He's week to week.
Jeez.
And you're going to see, I mean, every year it happens.
Yeah.
You're going to see vets, unless you're in a big jam for week one. A lot of those guys sit for a week. And then you see them signed right after the first game.
All right. There's going to be a lot of news, of course, I suppose I should say, coming out of Halisaw in preparation for this Bills game. But I'll ask you now, what are the position groups you're most interested in watching against Buffalo, especially since this Buffalo roster pretty good? Are you hoping to see, the changes in the offensive line, what they look like against Buffalo or another position group? What intrigues you most about this matchup with the Bills?
It's interesting. I don't know how Buffalo's going to treat this game because they played Josh Allen last week. So they're going to pull him this week. And some of those other guys who played last week, where Chicago didn't play him. So it could be a little bit of a flip-flop. I think that's the first thing you want to see. I mean, regardless of who's playing for Buffalo, you want to see the guys that are on the Bears team, these young guys, continue to grow. They got to keep climbing the stairway.
Yeah.
And if they level off or start going backwards, then that's not a good sign.
Correct. Yeah, very good point. I got to tell you, Jordan says elevating Roshan to the RB1 position would be his top watch. And I got to agree with him. I'm in love with Roshan Johnson just because he does everything well. It doesn't seem like he's got a weakness in his game. And frankly, everybody in this running back room is impressive. The Bears might have one of the best.
I don't think, my honest opinion is there's not going to be an RB1.
Yeah.
It's going to be running back by committee, and I think it could change from week to week based on
matchups.
Maybe based on matchups and who they're playing. Mm-hmm. What are the strong points and weak points of your opponent's defense? Who do we think can do the most damage? You're going to get into a game. You might stay with the hot hand. You could, Khalil could start off and he's slowed down. Then you put in Roshan for a series or Foreman for a series, and he has some nice runs. So you say, okay, go in the next series. And then he's still strong. You might say, okay, you're getting some good cards here right now. I'm going to stay with you a little bit, and that happens. I honestly think that's been the plan all along, because even last year they rotated.
Mm-hmm.
Monty got the majority of the snaps, but it wasn't by a huge amount.
Yeah, it was very close. Jeremy, who has been listening in his commute because he carpools to and from work, has this question for you. Because Greg, as a country music fan, what do you think of Richmond North of Richmond by Oliver Anthony? I've never heard of Oliver Anthony or the song Richmond.
Well, I have not heard the song. I know of the song, so I can't answer your question. I'm not a big country music fan. Mm-hmm. I am more a country music fan today than I was even 5 years ago. And part of that is both of my daughters are country music freaks.
Yeah, right.
And my wife's becoming she wouldn't think about country music. And, I've been to a few concerts, but I can't tell you, who's good, who's bad, or who's different. But as far as that song, that's a political song, just so, and it's anti-liberal, so you would not like the song.
As long as they're not preaching to kick my ass, and I don't care. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of GTF. We are back.
Hang on, I got to talk to you just for a second.
You bet. We are back live here tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then that's our hockey show. And then tomorrow night, it's Dan Aguirre and myself talking Bears and all sorts of other.
And we'll be back Wednesday next week, not Tuesday.
Right. That's right. We will be back Wednesday after rosters are somewhat set. We'll have plenty to talk about. And
I'll call it semifinal roster.
There you go. There you go. Thank you all for the 275 people who saw us live on our YouTube channel and hundreds more on our Twitter channel. Thank you all very much. For Greg Gabriel, my name is Aldo Gandia. We will see you next week.
See you later.
Thank you.